Russia has a phrase for moments like this. Russians do not fear hardship. It sounds heroic over parade music. On a drone screen, it looks different. A cheap aircraft searches a road. A refinery burns hundreds of miles from the front. The central bank holds interest rates at 14.25%. And another family receives a silence that no television speech can explain. A country can endure pain for a very long time. But endurance is not victory. And hardship is never free. For years, the Kremlin has turned suffering into a national superpower. If prices rise, it is sacrifice. If workers disappear, it is patriotism. If the war lasts longer than promised, patience becomes proof of strength. The message is almost elegant. The more pain Russia absorbs, the stronger Russia must be. But in 2026, that story is colliding with arithmetic. Russia is not collapsing. Its factories still work. Oil still moves. Missiles and drones are still produced. Shops remain open. Trains run. And Moscow can look astonishingly normal. That is exactly why Russia's predicament is easy to misunderstand. This is not a sudden disaster. It is a machine learning to survive by consuming its own future. The first trap is the battlefield. Modern war has made the front brutally transparent. Reconnaissance drones watch roads, tree lines, and supply routes. Strike drones can hunt vehicles that once moved safely behind the line. Electronic warfare jams one frequency, so engineers build around it. Armor improves, so weapons attack from another angle. Every solution produces a cheaper counter-solution. The result is a war of constant adaptation, measured in meters, machines, and human lives. Russia can replace equipment. It can recruit with large signing bonuses. It can use its industrial base and a population far larger than Ukraine's. But replacement is not the same as recovery. A destroyed vehicle can be rebuilt. A trained technician, experienced officer, or young worker cannot be manufactured on an assembly line. Exact Russian losses are impossible to verify. Moscow keeps the numbers secret, while the combatants publish claims that cannot be independently confirmed. But independent estimates describe an enormous human cost. In July 2026, the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated roughly 1.4 million Russian battlefield casualties since the full-scale invasion, including as many as 450,000 deaths. Mediazona and BBC Russian have confirmed many deaths by name, while stressing that their list is only a minimum. Ukraine has also paid a devastating price, and civilians remain trapped inside the equation. The United Nations recorded at least 282 civilians killed and 1,794 injured in Ukraine in June 2026 alone. 37% more casualties than in June the year before. This is not a scoreboard. It is the human invoice for a war that keeps finding new ways to continue. The second trap is labor. Russia's official unemployment rate was just 2.2% in the first quarter of 2026. Normally, that number would look like success. In a wartime economy, it can also be a warning. Soldiers are removed from civilian work. Skilled employees leave, age out, or move to defense factories. Companies compete for engineers, welders, drivers, and machinists. Wages rise in protected sectors, while weaker firms struggle to hire. The country has jobs. The problem is people. Demography makes this harder. Russia entered the war with an aging population and a shrinking pool of younger workers. Mobilization, immigration, and casualties did not create that problem, but they intensified it. A labor shortage can increase pay for some workers today while reducing the economy's capacity tomorrow. Rosstat reported that overdue wage debt reached about 2.07 billion rubles at the end of June 2026, more than double the level a year earlier. The total is small beside the federal budget, but the direction matters. Over half of the affected workers were in construction, the industry that is supposed to build the future while the state finances the present. The third trap is money. War spending can make gross domestic product rise. A tank counts as production. A missile counts as production. Rebuilding a destroyed vehicle counts again. But none of this automatically makes families richer or businesses more productive. The World Bank expected Russian growth of only 0.8% in 2026. The International Monetary Fund projected 1.1%. That is not collapse. It is a slowdown inside an economy receiving an extraordinary wartime stimulus. Meanwhile, the Bank of Russia kept its key interest rate at 14.25% after its June decision. High rates are the price of trying to control inflation and credit demand, while government spending keeps pressure inside the system. For a household, expensive money means a harder mortgage. For a business, it means delayed equipment, delayed expansion, or no expansion at all. The state can order a factory to prioritize war. It cannot order capital to become cheap. And there is oil. Russia's energy exports remain a financial lifeline. The finance ministry's own budget material projected roughly 10.6 trillion rubles in oil and gas revenue for 2026, equal to 4.6% of gross domestic product. That money helps fund the state, stabilize the currency, and sustain the war. But dependence creates a target. Sanctions raise transaction costs. Discounts reduce margins. Tankers, insurers, payment routes, and buyers become part of a complicated system designed to keep barrels moving. Ukrainian drones add another layer of risk by reaching refineries, depots, and logistics far from the front. Not every strike causes lasting damage. Not every fire changes the war. But each one forces Russia to defend a vast industrial geography. The world's largest country has discovered the strategic problem of having too much to protect. The fourth trap is the war economy itself. Defense factories create jobs. Regions receive contracts. Soldiers pay and compensation flow into towns that have been left behind. For many families, the military has become one of the few routes to life-changing income. This gives the war economy political durability. It also makes peace economically awkward. If military orders suddenly fall, what happens to the factories, wages, and regional budgets built around them? If they do not fall, how does Russia return capital and workers to civilian growth? The system can continue mobilizing resources, but every year makes the exit more difficult. This is the darkest joke inside the slogan about hardship. Pain is no longer merely something the system asks people to tolerate. Pain has become part of the system's business model. And still, Russia has strengths its critics often underestimate. It has natural resources, scientific talent, industrial depth, a large domestic market, and partners willing to trade. It has adapted to sanctions more effectively than many predicted. The government can direct money and production with a speed that liberal economies often cannot. But adaptation is not the same as escape. A drone war rewards speed, yet Russia must defend enormous distances. A war economy rewards state spending, yet the central bank must keep money expensive. Low unemployment looks strong, yet factories cannot find enough workers. Energy exports provide cash, yet expose the state to prices, sanctions, and strikes. Every advantage carries its own cost. That is Russia's real predicament in 2026. It is powerful enough to continue, but continuation deepens the conditions that make a clean victory, or a clean exit, harder. The propaganda answer is simple. Russians do not fear hardship. Perhaps they do not. Ordinary Russians have survived invasion, revolution, famine, repression, economic collapse, and wars that reshaped the world. Their capacity to endure is real. But endurance should never become a blank check for leaders. A population's toughness does not make every sacrifice necessary. It only makes the consequences easier to hide. The question is not whether Russia can survive another year of this war. It probably can. The question is what kind of country remains when survival becomes the entire strategy. When young workers become soldiers, civilian factories become arsenals, interest rates defend a pressured economy. And every new hardship is advertised as evidence that nothing is wrong. Russia may not fear pain, but arithmetic does not fear Russia. And eventually, every empire receives the bill.